Good morning and welcome to today's daily reflection. I'm not going to be too controversial this morning and give you my opinion on why you can be both a Christian and accept evolution. It's a fascinating subject to look back through the eons of time to find out how it all started. But during the recent lockdowns, I managed to work out, in a way, how I got here today. As we all know, to be born we need, obviously, 2 parents and 4 grandparents, and it goes on, 8 great-grandparents, 16 second great-grandparents, 32 third great-grandparents, 64 fourth great-grandparents, 128 fifth great-grandparents, 256 sixth great-grandparents, 512 seventh great-grandparents, 1024 eighth grandparents, and 2048 ninth great grandparents. So to be alive today, from 12 previous generations, you need a total sum of 4,094 ancestors over the last 400 years. Think for a moment how many struggles, how many battles, how many difficulties, how much sadness, how much happiness, how many love stories, how many expressions of hope for the future did your ancestors have to undergo for each of us to exist today in this present time? During lockdown, I actually managed to find all but 9 of my 64 fourth great-grandparents, who they were, where they lived. As I said, it's a fascinating journey. It was a fascinating journey for me, but to go further back would have been more problematic. So I stayed at 4th great-grandparents. But today's set reading tells of looking forward, not back. The reading is from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 13, verses 1 to 9. But I want to concentrate on verses 6 to 9. Then he told this parable. A man had a fig tree growing in his vineyard, and he went to look for fruit on it, but did not find any. So he said to the man who took care of the vineyard, "For 3 years now I've been coming to look for fruit on this fig tree, and I haven't found any. Cut it down. Why should it use up any more soil?" "Sir," the man replied, "leave it alone for 1 more year. I'll dig round it and fertilize it. If it bears fruit next year, fine. If not, then cut it down." This is the word of the Lord. Jesus tells this parable about a barren fig tree. But the tree itself is only a metaphor. The parable is really about second chances, telling how God mercifully gives us all second chances. In the parable, the owner of the vineyard had obviously spent a lot of time and energy caring for his fig tree, and he obviously expected some fruit. But the tree was barren. The owner, you'd think, had every right to cut down the tree and replace it with another, but he was convinced to give it another year. Now consider some biblical instances of people who were given a second chance. Jonah, he ran away from doing God's work, but God brought him back through obedience. King David, he broke half the 10 commandments in one fell swoop. Coveting, abuse of power, adultery, treachery, and murdering one of his most loyal men to marry his widow to cover it up. Thomas doubted the resurrection of Jesus, but he was given a second chance before he too believed. Peter, he denied Jesus 3 times, but Jesus came to him and gave him too a second chance. Matthew was considered by other Jews to be among the scum of the earth, being a tax collector, when Jesus called him to follow me. So when Matthew threw a dinner party that evening, guess who received invitations? Yes, more scum of the earth. The religious leaders saw red, but Jesus reminded them that God is a God of second chances. Later in Luke's Gospel, Jesus will tell this parable of the prodigal son to make the point that God truly is the God of second chances. He tells how the Father even threw a celebratory dinner because of the returning Son. A few chapters before, during yet another dinner party, a woman anointed Jesus' feet and he forgave her sins. Conversely, Jesus rebuked the party host, Simon the Pharisee. But what about ourselves? If we had to think back the last few months, few years even, what kind of person have we been? Are there regrets? Quite likely there are a few. But if we were able to write a letter to our younger selves, what advice would we give? Would it be to show more understanding, to care more, to be more patient, to be less critical, to be more supportive and helpful? I know that as I reflect on the past few years, there are certain things that I might have done differently. Similar to our relationship with God. Has it flourished and grown these past years, or has it just hovered in much the same place as it always has been? Or maybe it has gone backwards as we have prayed less, worshipped less. Maybe God no longer plays a big part in our lives nowadays. Might we be the fig tree the vineyard owner was disappointed in? We might believe that we have been abandoned by God because he hasn't answered our prayers the way we'd wish. We might feel unworthy to be face to face to God. But it is in that place that Jesus finds us. Because halfway through Psalm 22, which Jesus knew by heart, are these words: "The Lord doesn't hate or despise the helpless in all of their troubles. When I cried out, he listened. He did not turn away." God does not do abandonment. We will never be powerful enough on our own to make God's face turn away from us, because God knows us utterly and is with us always. We are never a disappointment. When I look back, not just at my life, but the lives of those who preceded me, for example, to the lives and loves, mistakes of my ancestors, in one line alone, my second great-grandfather Thomas and his wife Christina, my second great-grandmother, both were born out of wedlock, but they had a happy marriage, and among their children was my great-grandmother Elizabeth. Now the stories of both Thomas and Christina's birth make fascinating reading, but because of them I'm here today, hopefully not a disappointment to them, to those that followed, or to their memory. But I want to finish with these questions. Do I speak as a child of God? Do I act with the love of God in my heart? And do I interact with others with the same love and forgiveness that Jesus has shown towards me? How do we answer those questions? Whatever we do this coming week, do it with a smile. Bye for now.